Wie gehe ich am besten vor? This video is made as a help for teachers and self-teaching learners. I will be talking about the right progression to learn German. Progression in class means in what order you learn the topics. As a professional teacher, I've come to realize that the way presented in school books is far from optimal. The progression used in most schools is based on these textbooks and is quite harmful to the learning experience and the skill development. Using this method, I've taught students who then became the best in German of their school, university, and even their country, topping the competition by far. Let's look at the progression. I call it the logical progression because each part is based on something logically connected to the part before it. Before I start teaching grammar, vocabulary, or any introduction, I teach the pronunciation rules. Why do I do this? Because the German pronunciation is regular, and if you know the rules, you can pronounce everything you see. And with that skill, you can completely ignore the pronunciation of everything that is about to come. Imagine if you don't know the rules and start right with the vocabulary. Students would then have to deduct the rules from the words presented to them, which takes a lot of energy and will eventually lead to mistakes. So I teach the pronunciation a couple of lessons until most students can more or less read text out loudly so that a native German can easily understand them. Most students handle that quite well and actually have perfect reading skills afterwards. Only then will I continue with the introduction. This is obviously an important lesson that a normal class would also start with. I also add a couple of typical questions and answers that one would use in a conversation with someone new, namely, where are you from, how old are you, what's your job, what are your hobbies, and how are you. These are quite simple in German and have very similar answers, like I am Tom, I am 20, I am a clerk, I am fine. You get the idea. Now, this situational lesson can be used to introduce two levels of politeness, namely du and sie. As you see here, I've split the paper into two sides, one being the casual and the other being the polite level. The students already learn this very important fact while focusing on their introduction. After that, they of course need the rest of the personal pronouns and the present tense. With the present tense, I always do a comparison to English, if the students know English, because it's so different. I show them how many English tenses are included in the German present tense, and I let them translate sentences of several English tenses into German to show them how easy it is. In the beginning I only use weak verbs, but after everyone understands the inflection of the verbs, I expand the topic onto the verb categories, namely 3 irregular verbs, sein, haben, werden, 6 modal verbs, the weak and the strong verbs. Many teachers don't even care about the categories. They teach the weak as regular and all others as irregular, which leads to a lot of students suffering. Now, when teaching categories, I only briefly mention the modal verbs. I teach them the strong verb rules for the present tense. Then I give the 3 irregular verbs as a homework. When the students know how to use the personal pronouns and the verbs, I go over to the articles and cases. This is where I see a huge mistake by many teachers. They actually teach all the cases at once. It is completely unnecessary to know the dative and genitive case at this point for the students. What they need to understand is the nominative and accusative, so subject and object, and only for the definite article. These are only 4 words to learn, so it will be very easy for them. At the same time, you can introduce the word order subject, verb, object, which fits into this lesson naturally. Now that the students know basic sentences, there are several lessons that will arise from this basis. The order is up to you, but I like to continue with separable verbs. The reason is that if I finish those, I can do imperative grammar and begin instructing the students in German. Everything that has been learned by the students should be used by the teacher to communicate with them. And early imperative grammar is very useful for that. The next thing is plural and gender, which I do in the same lesson. Both have to be learned by heart to a certain extent, but I teach them the rules to avoid unnecessary learning by heart. Like, if a noun ends in e, it is female and the plural is n. This saves them a lot of energy and they can spend this on other topics like the articles. Now from this point they will need to learn about the indefinite articles. Remember not to do all cases, but only subject and object case. You can easily follow with the possessive articles in later lessons, as it is only adding a consonant to the beginning of that article. Then finally they need to learn about questions. That is basically question words plus the subject-verb switch. It is very useful and opens up many ways to practice sentences. It is also a perfect topic to transfer to the next big thing, which is modal verbs. With the modal verbs you expand the word order, which later allows the negation with nicht. It is also a good introduction to the subjunctive, Konjunktiv 2, which is used with modal verbs for politeness. I wouldn't go into much detail though, because that is a difficult topic to explore and should only be done after learning the simple past tense. After they have learned the negation with nicht, you can use the indefinite article and the nicht negation to introduce kein. Contrast this well so they can tell the difference. Finally, after all this, you introduce the third case, dative. Many teachers make the mistake of calling it another object case or indirect object, or don't even say the meaning at all. It must be clear that the dative is not used for objects, but is the receiver case. It shows a receiver, receiving an object or an action. I cannot stress enough how important it is to teach the students what the cases actually mean. Anyway, the dative lesson includes dative verbs as well as dative feelings like mir ist schlecht. This naturally leads into the personal pronouns of the dative. This can be perfectly combined with the accusative ones that haven't been learned at this point. This should be drilled quite a bit, as this is an important skill. The dative leads to the genitive case, and the new pronouns lead to the reflexive pronouns, so the reflexive verbs. With those verbs you should teach accusative as normal and later dative as special. After the students have mastered all 4 cases, the preposition topic is a logical follow-up. It is important to tell the students that with prepositions the cases mean nothing, so they don't confuse normal case meaning and prepositional case connection. After the normal prepositions have been fully understood, the dual prepositions will be available as a topic. Now, with that all done and finished, it is finally time to head to the present perfect. This is mostly about the past participle. The rules must be very clear to the students, especially the different rules regarding the verb categories. Just like with the present tense, I contrast this tense with the English past forms to show the big difference. I usually call the German present perfect the past form when I talk to the students, because that's pretty much its function. The present perfect allows for the present perfect with sein, and at this point you should also introduce the complete word order system. Now from that point on you can always introduce adjective declination, but I usually like to go to subclauses first because it fits well with the full word order topic. And subclause structure makes relative clause structure available as a topic. Then adjective rules and their declination is the next big topic. A big mistake I see teachers often make is introduce this way too early and give out the entire chart without any explanation, just as a homework to learn it by heart. If taught badly, this can be a nightmare for students. It has a very easy logic though, and with it the students have a much easier time. The adjective declination enables the comparative and then the superlative form. And these two forms can easily be used to introduce the infinitive with zu grammar. Then, in contrast to the present perfect, the future tense can be taught. This is usually very easy at this point. The future one tense enables the passive voice as a topic because it is a similar structure. And of course the future two tense, which comes much later. And another topic that logically follows the present perfect is the simple past tense that you will need for the modal and irregular verbs. This logically leads to the past perfect and also the full subjunctive Konjunktiv 2. At this stage, the students are prepared to learn any of the remaining grammar topics like Konjunktiv 1 and also confront real-life materials. The whole chart takes about 2 to 3 school years depending on the intensity of the course. You should practice every topic until the students understand it. A mistake I have seen many teachers do is they follow their book, going through all the lessons, ignoring if the students actually understand it or not. Only progress if the students fully understand it. While teaching the topics, use the most realistic examples possible and the most commonly used vocabulary, and do not add too many unnecessary words. I've seen vocabulary lists from students of other teachers that contained words I've never used in my whole life. This makes the student's life much harder and it limits their ability to find the right words. By the way, remember that this chart only shows the grammatical progression. You also have to do situational lessons like cafe, restaurant, hotel, clock time, and so on. This can be done at any time the necessary grammar has been acquired. I hope this helps German teachers to teach more efficiently and effectively. In the description you will find a list of tutorial videos for all the topics of this progression. Good luck and viel Erfolg!